RMB is just out with the second quarter BER Business Confidence Index. And if I look at the headline number, it's down 4 points to 42. On the face of it, that's not very encouraging. But I must say, if I look at the finer detail, there are big variations among the sectors. Confidence down sharply amongst the manufacturers, new car dealers. But then if you look at the building and construction sector, sentiment significantly better. Take us through the bad news first, Mpho, please.
That's correct, Etienne. As you indicated that for the manufacturers and new vehicle dealers, confidence was down in the second quarter of the year. And that is also not surprising. So if we think about the manufacturing sector, which also tends to be, have an international exposure, we first had the devastating floods in KZN, which impacted on manufacturing activity, particularly in that province.
KwaZulu-Natal.
In KwaZulu-Natal, yes. And our exporters, manufacturing exporters, also are facing slowing growth in our key exporting countries. So there's significant slowing demand there. And the new vehicle dealers also continue to face supply chain bottlenecks, limited stocks, and that definitely impacted on confidence. So those were some of the issues that impacted on confidence, particularly in those two sectors.
So I can talk about Toyota, the manufacturing plant, particularly in KwaZulu-Natal, had a huge impact. And then stock shortages when it comes to new vehicle dealers. It's an issue. Okay. Then let's talk a little bit about the outlier, the building sector. Wow. And here we had confidence increasing quite sharply.
Yes.
And is there anything particular that stands out in that sector?
So what's quite encouraging about that sector is that the improvement in confidence is driven by an improvement in underlying activity. So that's quite encouraging, and particularly more on residential activity. So that was the major boost that came through for confidence. And we're seeing significant improvement in residential building activity. And then if we also think about the opportunities presented by the damages that we saw in KZN, so if we also look at a provincial level also, we see that it was confidence in KZN that also improved, because of the rebuilding that has to take place. Contractors in that region saw a significant improvement in confidence.
Okay, so an uptick predominantly amongst contractors in the residential sector, but also a definite improvement when it comes to the non-residential sector. So certainly a more vibrant activity when it comes to construction, which is good news because this is a sector that has been lagging all the other sectors making up the BCI for a number of years.
For quite some time, exactly. So confidence in this sector is coming from quite historical lows.
Okay. Let's talk a little bit about retail. You know that it is a consumer-facing industry. Trading conditions are getting more difficult by the day. If you look at our results, just tell us a little bit which retailers are doing relatively better and which retailers are still battling. So just give us an idea.
Yeah, so I found the retail results quite interesting because there is a lot of variation there. If we look at the durable retailers, so that would be your furniture,
DIY.
DIY, exactly. So confidence they those retailers are not doing so well. And it's also not surprising, right? Because we saw huge purchases for those goods during the hard lockdown. And consumers can only buy so much furniture, right? And so many computers and whatnot. So it's not surprising that activity in there it's slowing. But for your semi-durables, which would be your clothing, we're seeing activity picking up there. Non-durable also, which is food. Obviously, even with such high prices, consumers will tend to cut back on other things first, before they cut back on food. So that was quite encouraging also. And then also surprisingly in wholesale, the wholesale space. Consumer goods are doing well, but non-consumer goods are not doing so well also.
Okay.
Yeah.
So yesterday we had a very strong GDP print in the context of the results that we just published. Are you confident that that strong pace of growth will be sustained in the second quarter?
We don't think it's going to be sustained. We're quite worried about the impact of the floods that's likely going to have on second quarter GDP. We're worried about intensified load shedding that's taking place. We're also worried about slowing pace of growth in our key trading partner countries. So we think that's going to be quite a significant drag on second quarter GDP. And we think that the strong momentum we saw in the first quarter GDP is unlikely to be sustained.
Okay, well, that being said, I think the strength in underlying economic activity, both in the fourth quarter of last year and in the first quarter of this year, I think most analysts have underestimated that. So that is something that we have to acknowledge. Are you thinking of perhaps lifting your full year GDP growth forecast?
I think we are going to have to consider it, and you're totally right. We are also one of those analysts that had underestimated the pace of growth in the first quarter of the year, and that provides quite a significant boost to our annual GDP forecast. So despite us being worried about second quarter growth, given the strong fourth quarter results, first quarter GDP print, that definitely suggests that there's upside risk to our annual GDP forecast of 1.5, and it's likely going to be revised higher.
Well, on that positive note, thank you, Mpho.
Thank you, Etienne.